Hello everyone, today our documentary video will be based on the Cold War using the realism theory. These are the group members. Let's start.
The Cold War lasted since the end of the Second World War until the communist system of the Soviet Union was destroyed around 1947 to 1991. Initially, the Second World War failed to be resolved in a series of negotiations that sparked a split and eventually led to the emergence of the World Bloc and the Cold War. The World Bloc referred to nation-states that have similar opinions and ideologies. In addition, the World Bloc formed during the Cold War was based on geopolitics. During the Cold War, there were two World Blocs involved, namely a capitalist bloc led by the United States and the communist bloc led by the Soviet Union. The Cold War was known as the Cold War because there was no direct armed conflict between the two blocs. There are several factors that led to the Cold War. Firstly, this is because of different ideologies and political beliefs. Then this is due to differences in economic policy, where the capitalist bloc allowed all its citizens to do business, while the communist bloc controlled all economic activities to avoid classes difference among its citizens. In addition, the expansion of the Soviet Union influence to Europe also provoked unrest from the United States, which also wanted to expand its influence. Lastly, the factor that led to the Cold War was because of the strained relation between the United States and the Soviet Union. By this, we can see that the United States and the Soviet Union both wanted to spread ideologies by showing their respective strength. This holds the approach of realism, where there is competition leading to victory and defeat.
Party involved in Cold War is United States with their allies and Soviet Union with their allies. There will be two international events, which is containment and Cuban Missile Crisis. First is containment. Most American officials agree that the best defense against the Soviet threat was a strategy called containment. Containment was a United States policy using numerous strategies to prevent the spread of communism abroad. This policy was a response to a series of moves by the Soviet Union to enlarge its communist influence in Eastern Europe, China, Korea, and Vietnam. Containment policy laid out by diplomat George Kennan, who eagerly suggested the United States prevent communist influence in Eastern Europe and Asia. One of the ways to accomplish this was by establishing NATO, so the Western European nations had a defense against communist influence. After Vietnam and the Tente, President Jimmy Carter focused less on containment and more on fighting the Cold War by promoting human rights in hotspot countries. United States followed this policy until the collapse of communism in 1989. So, how do we relate it with the realism theory? It is obvious that United States wants to ensure the security against Soviet Union to ensure their survival. Back to the realist idea, it is all about security, survival, selfishness, and pessimistic.
One of the events during arm race between United States and Soviet Union was Cuban Missile Crisis. After John F. Kennedy failed on the attempt to overthrow Cuba's premier, Fidel Castro, Prime Minister of the Soviet Union Nikita Khrushchev implemented a secret agreement toward Cuba's premier, which is to place Soviet warhead in Cuba in order to avoid future coup attempts by United States. In October 1962, United States and the Soviet Union engaged in attempts that took 13 days of political and military standoff because of the installation of nuclear-armed Soviet missiles on Cuba. Since Cuba was only 90 miles from United States shores, United States perceived it as a national threat. United States then launched blockade around Cuba and prepared to use military forces if necessary to neutralize the threat. United States and the Soviet Union come into agreement that Soviet agreed to remove the Cuban missile in exchange on United States' promise not to invade Cuba. The theories of realism can be observed as the event shows that the basic realist idea was met when United States shows high regard in terms of their national security and willing to use forces to neutralize the threat.
Next is suggestions and recommendations. First, balance of power. In the past, the realists sees international relations as conflictual and ultimately resolved by war, where its main concern and highest goal are the national security and state survival. But by having the balance of power between these two blocs, US and Soviet Union, it can discourage war as they know that to become unduly powerful, it might cause war. Balance of power might be contradict with realism theory, but these days, in the modern world, they will consider to find other ways first before inflicting war onto other countries, as everyone wants to preserve the peace and harmony that they have gained few years back. Therefore, with the balance of power, no country can be completely eliminated and war can be prevented. Next is creating strategies to create peace between both countries that are in conflict. Realists may agree that international relations is the realm of recurrence and repetition. International anarchy and power politics will continue to be unavoidable features of international relations since any policymaker who refuses to follow the self-help logic of anarchy runs the risk of jeopardizing the security or even survival of the state he or she represents. Thus, foreign policy decision makers such as the US or Soviet Union should pursue strategies of diplomatic or economic change as a prudent way of promoting change and achieving peace in accordance with their own principles and interests, but with only minimal impact on changing the international relations system or the nature of international relations.
To conclude, realism theory emphasizes on the role of nation-state and makes an assumption that all nation-states are motivated by national interest, or at best, national interest disguised as moral concerns, which is ultimately for their own survival and to maximize their power. For example, the US and Soviet Union promised to give economic and military assistance to other countries in exchange for their support during the Cold War. That is all from our group. Thank you.